Hello, welcome to another IELTS Writing Task 1 video. For IELTS Writing Task 1, there are 4 objectives that you gotta hit. Task achievement, coherence and cohesion, lexical resources, and of course, grammatical range and accuracy. See, in this video, we'll cover coherence and cohesion. By the end of this video, you'll really know how to write clearly, coherently, and of course, with confidence. Before we get started, take a notebook out, get a pen, and start taking notes. It'll be a lot easier for you to consume this information, understand it, and then apply it. Second, be patient with yourself. It takes a little bit of time to learn English, get up to speed, and clear IELTS, so be patient. So without further ado, let's get started. First of all, let's start by checking your understanding. Again, it's true or false, so answer. Is it a good idea to use as many connections as I can? Do you think that's true? False? What do you think? Well, if you think it's false, that's right. You don't have to do as many as you can, but do a good amount. Number 2, using only basic and repetitive connectives may lead to an unsatisfactory score in the domain of coherence and cohesion. Is that true? Is that false? What do you think? Well, if you think the answer is true, that is right. You have to use variety. Variety is the key here. Number 3, I can use some other words that have similar meanings. True, false, what do you think? Well, if you think it's true, that is right, it is true. Use as many synonyms as you possibly can. Helps you with your vocabulary. And finally, I should divide my answer into paragraphs. Do you think that's true, false, what do you think? Well, it's true. You gotta write in a format that's appropriate, you gotta break down the information and do as so. You can't just go about scribbling in lines or just writing up one big paragraph or writing 2 big paragraphs. No, not how it goes. So break your answer down into paragraphs. So when we talk about coherence and cohesion, there are a couple of things that you gotta keep in mind. Breaking it down, this is what it looks like. So coherence and cohesion, basically what it is connectivity, connecting sentences and connecting paragraphs and words as well, of course. So breaking it down into 2 things, we have coherence and we have cohesion. Coherence happens on idea level, cohesion happens on a sentence level. So keep that in mind. So let's look at coherence. When you have to think of idea level, you have to think about paragraphing. Write the information into paragraphs and then provide it as such. Now for cohesion, for sentence level, 3 things you gotta keep in mind. First of all, use synonyms. Second, you gotta use as many pronouns as you can. And finally, cohesive devices. That's, the key. This entire thing is what's going to help you with coherence and cohesion for an 8+ band. So it takes a little bit of time. Give it time. Practice. Now let's look at paragraphing. So when IELTS examiner is looking at your answer, these are the 2 things that he's going to be looking at. Did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically within a paragraph? Did you do that in your answers? Next thing that the examiner is looking at is, did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically between paragraphs? So again, this is something, they're looking at sentence level and paragraph level. So keep that in mind. Now let's look at some ideas and examples here. So look at this question for paragraphing. I'll give you a couple of minutes. Go at it, read it, and then we'll look at the answers. Alrighty, let's look at example number 1. In 2013, the US had the highest GDP, $17,000 billion US. China was 2nd place, while Japan and Germany ranked the 3rd and 4th by having a GDP of $9,000, $4,900, and $3,600 billion respectively. They were followed by France, the UK, and Brazil, where GDP reached $2,700, $2,500, and $2,200 billion. Russia ranked the 8th, and Italy and India were in the 9th and the 10th place. While the GDP in Japan dropped from $4,900 to $4,800 billion in 2014, the top 4 in GDP ranking of the year remained unchanged. They were the US, where GDP grew from 17,000 to 17,500, China, where it raised from 9,000 to 10 100, and Germany, where it increased from 3,600 to 3,700 billion. GDP in both the UK and France raised in 2014. However, their ranking switched to the 5th and the 6th with 2,800 and 2,750 billion US dollars respectively. Brazil remained in the 7th place, followed by Italy, India, and Russia. Now let's analyze this answer. So first of all, did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically within a paragraph? Yes, they did, although not explicitly stated by a topic sentence. Example, the 3 columns on the left of the table shown GDP of the 10 countries in 2013. The ideas in the 2 paragraphs are coherent. That is, the first paragraph is about GDP in 2013. Second paragraph is about 2014. So they did break it down, right? They started with 2013, then they went to 2014. So that's kind of like, how the idea flew. So it's good. Now, next thing. Did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically between a paragraph? Did they do that? Yep. Although not explicitly stated by a topic sentence, comparing the countries' GDP between 2013 and 2014, a number of fluctuations could be noted. Ideas between the 2 paragraphs are connected. For example, in the second paragraph, the writer mentions the changes between 2013 and 2014 after reporting the GDP in 2013. So they did cover that, so the ideas are connecting. So, look at these answers, go through them and see what defines them the way they are, how they are written, and use some words that you pick up some words from here that you can use for your answers. Let's look at example number 2. The highest increase in GDP from 2013 to 2014 was China. It had increased US $1,100 billion. Although China had increased the most GDP from 2013 to 2014, United States was still the top of the GDP ranking in 2013 and 2014. It was US 17,000 billion in 2013 and 17,500 billion in 2014. It had increased US $500 billion. So the countries of the top 4 GDP ranking also remained unchanged. However, France and Russia fell in the GDP ranking from 2013 to 2014. Although France's GDP increased, its ranking decreased because the rise of the UK was higher. Alright, let's look at the analysis for this one. Did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically within a paragraph? Was that done? Kind of. It's yes and no. While the ideas in the first paragraph are connected, they're reporting the increase of GDP, the ideas in the second paragraph are not. So that's a problem there. It is unclear whether the writer wants to focus on countries between where GDP remained unchanged or those where GDP remained ranking decreased. So not too clear, but kind of did the job. Now, did the student connect ideas by organizing information thoughtfully and logically between a paragraph? Yeah, they did not. See? This is the problem. No logical connection is drawn by the writer between the 2 paragraphs. A suggestion for the writer is that in the first paragraph, he can focus on countries where GDP or GDP ranking changed. In the second paragraph, she can focus on countries where GDP ranking remained unchanged. Could have done that way, but they didn't. So, not a great answer, but now you know why. Now, let's look at cohesive devices. For cohesive devices, there are 3 things that you need to show in your answer. First of all, you have to use paragraphs. Then, you have to use the cohesive devices meaningfully and accurately. Finally, was there a variety of cohesive devices used? So you have to use variety as well. Let's look at this question. I'll give you a couple of minutes, go through it, read the information, and then let's, look at the answers. Now let's look at example number 1. It is seen that relatively younger interviewees felt negative about the stated gender roles. The 18 to 25 age group had the highest percentage against the statement. In contrast, less supporters were found among people who are between 45 and 55 than the 18 to 25 group regarding the statement, "A man's duty is to earn money while a woman's duty is to look after her family." Now, on the contrary, three age groups, 26 to 35, 36 to 45, and 56 to 65, are recorded with more than 1/10 of support on the attitudes towards gender role. Around 1/3 of the people aged 45 to 55 interviewed responded neutrally towards the statement. Only 13% of the respondents under 35 held a neutral view towards the gender role description. So, let's look at the analysis for this answer. Now, first of all, what cohesive devices did the student use in the paragraph? So they did use cohesive devices. So they used in contrast and on the contrary. So, a way to kind of start things. So they did that. Were the cohesive devices used meaningfully and accurately? Yes, they were. The two cohesive devices were used to show different opposing ideas. Were there a variety of cohesive devices used? Nope, it's not. So, it doesn't help. The only type of cohesive devices used in this example is showing differences. They didn't use any similarities, they didn't compare anything else, just those two devices there. So, let's look at example number 2. For the positive responses, no more than 6% of the interviewees of two age groups, 18 to 25 and 46 to 55, agreed with the statement. On the other hand, around 1 out of 10 of the interviewees of the other age groups agreed with it. Finally, for the neutral stance, 13% of the interviewees of the age groups 18 to 25 and 26 to 35 voted for it. Moreover, 1 out of 5 of 36 to 45 and 56 to 65 age groups had a neutral stance. The age group which voted the most in the neutral stance is 46 to 45 with almost 30%. Let's look at an analysis for this. Now, what cohesive devices did the student use in the paragraphs? Did they use them? So they used as for, on the other hand, finally, moreover. So there is, a variety of those. Were the cohesive devices used meaningfully and accurately? Yes, they were. So they used as for to show aspects of ideas. On the other hand was used to show contrast. Finally was used to show sequence of ideas. Moreover, it was used to add new ideas. So it was used pretty nicely actually. Were there a variety of cohesive devices used? Yes, there were. Look at all this information here. They used so many of these, right? Makes sense. It's a good answer. Now let's move forward. When it comes to pronouns, there are 3 things you gotta keep in mind. So pronouns, did the student use them in paragraphs? What did the pronouns refer to? And finally, were the pronouns used accurately? So these 3 things you gotta keep in mind. For a little quick note on pronouns, if you don't know it, in English, pronouns are used to avoid repetitions. At the same time, anarchic pronouns, that is pronouns which refer to the preceding sentence, are used to strengthen the linkage between sentences. So it helps you to get the information flowing, but then it also helps you to avoid repetition, right? So it helps you avoid to do that. There you go. Let's look at this question real quick. I'll give you a couple minutes, go at it, look at this information, read, and then let's look at the answer. Alright, let's go. So let's look at example 1. Birth rate in China per 1,000 people stood at around 37% in 1950 and dramatically decreased to approximately 17% in 1960, after which it experienced a sharp rise, peaking at about 38% in 1965. Then, the birth rate in China per 1,000 people fell again considerably to about 12% in 2015, with a fluctuation between 1975 and 1995. The death rate in China in every 1,000 people was at about 17% in 1950. It increased by around 5% in the next 5 years. After that, it was up significantly and overtook the birth rate, reaching its peak at about 26% in 1960. But it started to decline again to about 9% in 1965, and then remained stable and was lower than the birth rate per 1,000 people in China in the next 50 years, finally reaching at 8% in 2015. Quick thing to notice, the first paragraph was about birth rate. The second paragraph was about death rate. So that's, good paragraphing, good information flow, good comparison, easy to understand. This makes sense, right? Now let's look at the example and let's look at the analysis for this. So, when we look at for an analysis for pronouns, what pronouns did the student use in the paragraph? So they used it, right? So in paragraph 1 it was subject pronoun, same in paragraph 2. In paragraph 3 it was like a possessive subject adjective. So what did the pronouns refer to? Para 1, it was the birth rate in China. Para 2, it was the death rate in China. As a possessive adjective, it was the death rate in China again. Were the pronouns used accurately? Yes, they were. So this is actually a very solid answer. They used a variety of linking verbs here. They used a lot of different synonyms too. So it really helps, to look at this information and the way it flows. Try to make your answers like this. They'll really help you out. Now let's look at synonyms. 3 things you gotta keep in mind when it comes to synonyms. First of all, you have to use synonyms. Second, you have to find words that can be replaced by synonyms and replace them. And finally, what other synonyms do you think you could use in their answer? Okay, let's look at this question first. I'll give you a couple minutes, go through it, and then let's look at an answer and analyze it. Alright, let's look at example 1. 2 main suicide methods in the US are drug abuse and hanging. Referring to the chart, there is one person who dies by hanging and taking drugs every day in the US. What do you think about the overall gist of this? Doesn't matter, let's quickly analyze this answer. First of all, did the student use any synonyms? Yeah, they used synonyms. They wrote, the writer used taking drugs to replace drug abuse. Another quick note, drug abuse can also be written as substance abuse because, that's another way of saying drugs. So if someone has an addiction, you can say substance use disorder. That's another verbiage that you can use. Write that down. Which words could be replaced by synonyms? Yeah, there are some words that could be replaced. US could be replaced by United States of America. And finally, what synonyms do you suggest the students use? Well, hanging could be replaced by a couple of words saying being sent to the gallows. That's another way of saying hanging. Now let's look at example 2. From the above chart, it shows some statistics of middle-aged people's suicide methods in the United States. It is displayed by gender. Firstly, we can observe that the most common suicide method for both male and female is by hanging. There are 450 males and 900 females committing suicide by hanging respectively. At the same time, taking drugs is also another most common suicide way for males. There are also 450 males taking drugs to commit suicide. Now let's look at the analysis for this one. So, first of all, did they use any synonyms? Yep, they did. The word statistics is used to replace the word information in the question. So, that's a good way to go about it. Which words could be replaced by synonyms? Again, US can be replaced by United States of America. And suggestion for synonyms here, first of all, they could say hanging. That could be said as being sent to the gallows. Commit suicide could also be replaced by attempt self-murder. That's another way of saying suicide. So there you go. That's the gist of coherence and cohesion. If you haven't already seen the other video about task achievement, I highly recommend that you start there and then come down to this video. And you know what? IELTS is such a thing. It takes a little bit of time to understand. It takes a little bit of time to learn things. So be patient, try these things out, watch this video a couple of times. It'll help you regain the information and keep it in there and then just learning from it. Of course, if you have any friends who are struggling with any of this, share it with them. This might help them. And hey, you know what? If you like the video, subscribe. I'll be putting more information out there, so don't miss out. Alright, have good luck with your exam. I'll see you in the next video.